Hello everyone and welcome to the official YouTube channel of Celebrate Veterans Group, also known as CVG. My name is Tony Marco and today we're honored to begin what we hope will become an important series of conversations preserving the stories, leadership, lessons, and experiences of American veterans. Today's guest is someone whose life has been defined by leadership, sacrifice, faith, family, and service to others, both in and out of uniform. Joining us today is Lieutenant Colonel retired Frank Peluso of the United States Air Force. Lieutenant Colonel Peluso served our nation for more than 26 years as pilot, instructor, evaluator, diplomat, and military leader. His distinguished career took him across the globe, from flying combat missions over Laos and Cambodia during the Vietnam era to serving at the U.S. Embassy in Moscow during his final years of the Cold War, to supporting arms control treaty inspections in Russia. Throughout his service, he flew multiple aircraft, including the EC-47, the C-141, the VC-135, and the C-20, while earning numerous honors including Distinguished Flying Cross, multiple air medals, and served meritoriously service medals. After retiring from the Air Force, he continued serving through the Federal Aviation Administration and remained deeply involved in church, community, and performing arts operations. Lieutenant Colonel Peluso, thank you for your service to our nation, and thank you for joining us today. So let's begin at the beginning. Tell us a little about where you grew up and what life was like before entering the military.
I grew up in Brockton, Massachusetts. I was in a blue-collar family, and my older brother and I were educated in public schools, and we were the first ones in our family to ever go to college. It was a pretty normal, stable environment for us. No major concerns that we can think of.
You mentioned in your reflections that the draft played a major role in your decision, and that at the time, serving was simply what people did. What was the atmosphere like for young Americans during that era?
Well, my college days took place during the height of the Vietnam War. And at that time, under the draft, every young male had a military obligation of some kind. And everyone dealt with it in their own way. And even though I had a student deferment going to UMass at the time, I was advised by my older brother that this war might really outlast that deferment, and I better think about what I have to do after I graduate. So he convinced me to go into the Air Force ROTC program. But as far as the ROTC program itself, I'll give you some specific. In my freshman year, the Air Force program had about 400 cadets. The Army program had about 600 cadets, about 1,000 cadets on campus. It was huge. It was an enormous program, and we would hold big parades on campus. By the time I was a senior, well, at that time, our Air Force contingent alone, the cadets would fill a whole auditorium. By the time I was a senior, after the draft had ended, we could just barely fill a classroom. So it kind of tells you how the draft really impacted a lot of people from my generation.
So what drew you specifically toward aviation and becoming a pilot?
Well, my father served as an infantryman in World War II, but he had a strong affinity toward aviation. And much later in life, he did some private flying. But he really emphasized flying and aviation to us all the time, to the extent we'd go to watch drive-in movies to see Strategic Air Command with Jimmy Stewart and watch Bridges of Toko-Ri with William Holden. And I remember that, of course, we had a bedtime in our house. However, there was a program on TV that involved aviation or space, like Steve Canyon. We were allowed to stay up late just to watch that, and maybe even do our homework a little bit just to watch that program.
Steve Canyon, that brings back some memories.
Yeah.
So you completed undergraduate pilot training at Sheppard Air Force Base in Texas in 1973. What was pilot training like during that period?
Well, Sheppard Air Force Base had a very unique training program. It was actually the training program for the German Air Force, the Luftwaffe. And the Luftwaffe could sometimes not quite fill all the classes that they needed, so the Air Force would backfill with American students. So half of my class in undergraduate pilot training was German. And I'll never forget the first time I met my German classmates. Lieutenant Manfred Hartmann came up and introduced himself to me. And the first thought that crossed my mind was that, holy smoke, our fathers probably would have tried to kill each other. We got along famously with our German classmates, and believe it or not, one of their favorite things to watch on TV was Hogan's Heroes. They thought it was so funny. They would come there, they'd walk around imitating Sergeant Schultz all day, saying, "I see nothing."
Was there a moment during training when you realized flying was truly going to become your life's calling?
Let me tell you about pilot training. It was a real roller coaster ride, and there were days of bitter failure, and there were days of real triumph. You know, it was quite an amazing experience. And you know, like some of my classmates washed out, and I often caught myself wondering if I was ever going to make it through. Back then, everyone flew the T-37 and T-38 aircraft in succession there. Nowadays, they split it up. After you get through with the T-37, they send you off to train you for multi-engine aircraft, where other students will go to try to fly the T-38s to learn to fly fighter aircraft. In those days, everyone got trained on the T-38. So, yeah, there were moments that, like, you just go out and they say, okay, take this supersonic jet, strap it to your butt, and go up there and fly for an hour. It was just fantastic. It was great. So, yeah, there were moments when that were very inspirational at the time.
Okay, so let's talk about Vietnam era and combat missions. Soon after flight training, you were assigned as an EC-47 pilot in Thailand during the Vietnam era. What do you remember most about arriving there?
Well, when I first arrived there, I went into a deep culture shock. I mean, I had been through every kind of survival school the Air Force could put me through, and I was convinced I was destined to be shot down, captured, and try to escape and evade through the jungle. But then, after I started flying missions, my attitude changed. My 23-year-old hubris kicked in, and you know, when you're 23 years old, you think you're immortal. Well, that kind of kicked in. All the bombing missions had stopped by that time, but we in the EC-47 still had a mission. We were still flying over bad guy territory, and we were alone, unarmed, and afraid. We were flying in a very slow-moving airplane that if the people on the ground had the right weapon, they could reach us. So we mostly flew at an altitude that was pretty safe from small arms. But there were some weapons on the ground scattered here and there that were able to reach us. As a matter of fact, about 6 months before I arrived there, the last EC-47 was shot down over Laos. They lost the whole crew. And a little bit before that, one of our airplanes came back with a big hole blown in the wing.
Wow.
So that's what I arrived to. That's what I
Quite a shock.
came there. It was a culture shock. It was a time when you had to grow up fast.
Amazing. So you flew approximately 70 combat missions over Laos and Cambodia between 1973 and 74. Can you explain the nature of those missions and what your responsibilities were?
The mission was, we were an airborne listening post. We had, as a crew, we had pilots, and then we had a navigator in the back, and we had, so depending on the configuration of the airplane, we would have a certain number of security service personnel who were linguists and code breakers, and we could listen to what they were saying, but at the same time, because we were so mobile up there in the air, we could move around and pinpoint the location of where they were transmitting from. So that was our job, and collected a lot of intelligence. We stayed relatively high, about 10,000 feet, to avoid the small arms fire. We were kind of hanging it out there.
So what was it like flying in combat environments during that time?
At that time, in that phase of the Vietnam conflict was when Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge were taking over Cambodia. You know, there was combat going on the ground. You didn't really become that aware of it until you flew at night. And we'd fly at night around Phnom Penh, and then at night you could see every muzzle flash, every tracer that was going on below you. And then we see some airbursts. Navigate would direct us, fly over there, and see some airbursts, and say, oh, no, I'm not flying over there.
Wow.
Pick another place you want us to fly to.
So combat aviation requires tremendous focus and discipline. How did those experiences shape you both as a pilot and a leader?
Really, you stay focused on getting the airplane safely back to your base. You know, it was really, that's really what it was all about. And I don't know if you know about the C-47. They called it, they nicknamed it the Goonie Bird because it's like a Goonie bird, just the black-footed albatross. In the air, it's very graceful, it flies very nicely. On the ground, it is totally clumsy and awkward, and that's how the C-47 flew. Well, there was one incident where we actually, I was in the right seat, and my aircraft commander in the left seat really made a overcorrected. Well, we were landing slightly in a crab, and we ended up going off of the side of the runway and doing a ground loop, spinning the airplane around in the grass. And the poor guys in the back were absolutely petrified. You know, they thought they were going to die. And I'm sitting up there in the cockpit just saying, oh, this is embarrassing. But yeah, there was a lot of discipline involved, and particularly, we had Class 5 materials aboard, and we had to safeguard those and make sure that, as a matter of fact, when we finally brought that airplane to a stop, the first thing the aircraft commander stood up, the first thing he told me was, grab the classified. So I grabbed the classified and dashed out the door. Minimal damage on the airplane, because after all, it was designed to land on grass. So
really,
yeah. All I did was snap the the tail wheel pin that held the wheel in place there, snapped it off. Got an operational the next day.
Were there moments during those missions that remain especially vivid in your memory today?
Yeah, I would say the missions over Phnom Penh were probably the night missions were probably really stick out in my mind.
So military aviation often creates strong bonds between crew members. How important was teamwork and trust in the cockpit?
Oh, I still correspond with my flying buddies now, particularly on Facebook. There's a lot of them I keep up with all the different flying jobs that I had,
wow.
And with some of the people I served with in Russia as well. So yeah, you do develop some strong bonds.
That's great. Mm-hmm. You received a Distinguished Flying Cross and multiple air medals. What did those honors mean to you personally?
They mean a lot to me. Well, especially since Virginia allows me to put my DFC on my license plate. Carry it with me all the time.
Looking back now, what do you think younger generations should understand about those who served during the Vietnam era?
I'd advise young generations that to find fulfillment in your life, it may not be about doing what you want to do. Sometimes it's about doing what you have to do. You can find fulfillment that way too.
Great. Okay, so let's move on to your aviation career and leadership. So after Southeast Asia, your career expanded into several major assignments involving the C-141 and later the VC-135 and the C-20 aircraft. How did your career evolve over time?
I was assigned to C-141s directly out of time in Southeast Asia. I served at Travis Air Force Base. Like any new job, it was a growth process. But eventually they figured I was such a bad pilot that they would make me an instructor. I went on to become an instructor at the training center at Altus Air Force Base, where you take young pilots right out of basic pilot training and you teach them to fly the big jet. Later on, I left flying after I did my tour in Russia as an air attaché and flew the VC-135 out here at Andrews Air Force Base. And we had, it's a VIP transport squadron. And some of the passengers I flew were the Secretary of State Baker, Brent Scowcroft, and Colin Powell, and other, really high-ranking people globally. We had long range of the VC-135. It had the same fuel configuration as a tanker, so we could go a long, long way. So this is one of my trips completely around the world.
You also became an instructor pilot and an evaluator pilot. What did you enjoy most about teaching and mentoring younger pilots?
Well, I really like teaching. I really like imparting knowledge to people, and you see that light come on. You know, that they have that aha moment. I found that very satisfying. I taught all the different phases of flight because we had classroom, then we had simulator, and then we had actual flight training on the aircraft. And I worked in all those different phases. I think I enjoyed classroom the most because I'm kind of ham. I like being on stage, and it's fun to get up, interact, and joke around with students that you're teaching. One of my students was Eileen Collins. I don't know if you know who she is. She was the first female space shuttle commander. And she came through and checked out C-141s, and I was her instructor at the time. I got her autograph picture and all that sort of thing.
At what point you took a break from active flying duty to fly Boeing 737s for Air Florida before returning to active duty? What led you to that decision?
Well, I'd have to say that I got caught up in the rush. Airlines were hiring big time. All those airlines like Eastern, Braniff, the ones that don't exist anymore, they were hiring at the time. I have to admit a little bit of peer pressure. This is the road to success. Become an airline pilot. You'll be all set for life. But later I came to the conclusion, and I came to this conclusion, I think, which is what made me leave Air Florida and go. I was very fortunate. I was able to get back into the Air Force, my very same job, flying as a C-141 instructor. But I came to the conclusion that flying airplanes for me was foundational, but I can't say that it was aspirational. I mean, it was a good basis on which I do, but I wanted to do other things. There was more to me than just flying.
Sure. Plus, those airline pilots, they put in a lot of hours away from home and on the road. And
yeah, well, I did that in the military as well. But when you're sitting number 25 for takeoff, the 25th airplane in line to take off at JFK, you got a plane load of whiners back there complaining about sitting on the runway. And I think, oh boy, I get to do this until I'm 60 years old. I said, no, I think I said, hey, Air Force, can I come back? I was very fortunate. They let me back in.
How different was civilian aviation compared to military aviation, besides the whiners?
Oh, we had plenty of whiners in the military, too. Civilian aviation was actually very, very intense. You flew a lot more variety of different types of approaches, got to different types of airfield. We would fly, like with Air Florida, we'd fly 10 hops in a day. All up and down Florida, and it was just far more intensive in the actual flying experience. Now and we fly into these high traffic areas like JFK and like Reagan International, that are really tricky approaches. You didn't get as much of that flying in the military. So when I got back into flying the C-141s again, some of the guys came up to me and said, well, Frank, we're going to have to get you all reoriented to flying now because you've been gone for a year. And I said, watch me. Hold my beer.
There you go. So throughout your career, you continually took an increasing responsibility. What leadership qualities do you believe are most important in military aviation?
I'd say humility. I would tell younger pilots, look, listen to your crew, listen to the people that are supporting the mission. You may be the aircraft commander, but you're not the know-it-all. You got to work as a team. You got to learn how to use your people as a team.
So you later served as commander of troops and held leadership positions at the Defense Language Institute Language Center. Tell us about those responsibilities.
Well, first of all, the DLI-ELC, located there at Lackland Air Force Base, was a training center for foreign military students. They would come over to train on American equipment like our tanks and our airplanes, but before they did that, they had to learn English. So we put them through this English language school. So we would have maybe at any given time about 700 foreign military students from all sorts of backgrounds, from maybe 70 different countries. And they would be everything, from the lowest ranking people from third world countries all the way up to royalty, like from Saudi Arabian countries. Yeah, but one of the things, being as the commandant of troops, it was kind of like being the dean of students. Basically, see to their morale, welfare, and if we had disciplinary problems with them, then I was the guy that had to organize a disciplinary evaluation board and see if we could, what we needed to retain the student, throw the student, send them back to their country, or whatever. And let me tell you, people they came from all over the world, and they had the most creative ways to get into trouble. I remember being on the phone at night to the local magistrate in town in San Antonio. Said, "Could you please turn this guy over to us? We'll take care of his disciplinary action. Don't keep him in jail, please."
So as someone who traveled the world and circled the globe twice, what did international service teach you about people and cultures?
Well, Tony, it taught me that I don't want to live any place but here in the USA.
Moving on, let's discuss Cold War and Moscow assignments. One of the most fascinating parts of your career was your assignment in Moscow during the final years of the Cold War. How did that opportunity come about?
Well, Tony, it was pure luck, because they had a person lined up to go over and take that job. And he committed the worst of all sins. He got divorced on his way. And they couldn't have that going into Moscow. They would have a big non-fraternization policy with the Soviets at the time. So they needed to fill in someone that they didn't have to send to language school, because there wasn't time to do that. They had to get the guy over there. So they asked me, I said, "Can you fill in that slot? You already got the language skills. You can go into that." So I came home and kind of humbly asked Cheryl, "What do you think about going to Moscow?" But she can tell you how she felt about it. So she wasn't that enthused about it.
So you served as an assistant air attaché at the U.S. Embassy in Moscow from 1986 to 1988. What exactly does an air attaché do?
Well, aside from the things I can't talk about, in this particular time in Moscow, there was a lot of exchanges going on. We were sending delegations over there to set up things that would eventually lead to the Reagan-Gorbachev summit. And so there were congressional delegations and other groups coming in, and they would fly in on the airplanes from the 89th there, the airplanes that I would fly in the future. So I did a lot of support for the crews coming in. It's just a strange environment, get them, help them get around town, help them get what they needed to complete their missions, get them computer flight plans and that sort of thing. But I also had representational duties, basically showing the flag. Once in a while, they actually, most of the time we worked in civilian clothes, but occasionally they'd have to wear a dress uniform. Every November 7th, they have a big military parade in Moscow, right through Red Square. That's when they roll all the tanks and the missiles and everything through the square. Yeah. And that year, 1987, they were in Afghanistan. And we did not like the fact that they were in Afghanistan. And so when they invited the defense attaché, which was a one-star general General Rocky was there at the time, and his guidance was, don't honor the Russians with sending any representing us there at the parade. Instead, send the most junior officer you have in the embassy. Well, that happened to be me.
Wow.
So I went in there, stood beside Lenin's tomb on Red Square, and there were all the other attachés from all different countries, the Canadians, the Germans, the British, and the French, and everyone else out there. And there were the bad guys too. There's the Palestinian organization and all the other, and the Chinese and everyone else. We were all just one big happy family standing beside Lenin's tomb. And I thought, okay, this is good. I'm here to insult the Russians. Okay, I'm here. I hope you feel insulted. But it went further than that, though, because I didn't realize at the time, I found out later, that it's a tradition that the highest military ranking Russian up there would come down off the reviewing stand and come and greet all the attachés. So here I am standing there, and everyone kind of, because we're military guys, we kind of form up in a line, and he goes down and he's shaking hands with every single one of the attachés from the different countries. He comes up to me and the whole crowd spreads apart. Here is the meeting of the superpowers. it was Marshal Akhramiev, the highest ranking Russian military guy, and Major Peluso. And I'm like, and he knew that I was there to insult him. And I just said, "S praznikom," which is basically a Russian holiday greeting, happy holidays sort of greeting. And he gave me a look that, of disgust. Yeah, and just walked on. And when it was all over, I took the metro home, and everyone was back at the got a lot of back slaps. So I got back to the embassy. Said, "Hey, great job, great job." I said, "Yeah, what'd I do? I insulted him."
That's funny. That is funny. So that period included major Cold War events, including the Reagan-Gorbachev summit. What was it like witnessing history firsthand?
Well, I'll tell you, standing at the bottom of the steps at the airport, Vnukovo Airport, and whole crowd all around. The Russians had a big honor guard out there, and they're playing up there, and they're playing our national anthem, their national anthem. Out of the airplane, I'm looking up, and there he is, Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan stepping out of the airplane. And I was like, wow, I can't believe I'm actually here doing this. And the coolest part was that my mother and her husband came over to visit us at the time, so she got to see that too, and that's great. That was awesome.
Yeah, that is. So you participated in exchanges with senior Russian military officials. Even served as interpreter for Russian Air Force Chief General. Now I'm going to butcher this name here. Denyakin. Aboard a USAF B-1 bomber. That must have been an incredible experience.
They wanted a pilot on board who could speak aviation to the Russians, and to act as an interpreter, because they put a B-1B instructor pilot in the right seat up front, and then they put General Denyakin in the left seat. Behind that, there's two seats. There's the defense system operator, which is the seat that I sat in, and the offensive system operator. So I basically was in the blind back there and just listening to on the headset the conversation, translating as they spoke to each other. I was told, I couldn't see it myself, that we're flying always up and down the side of a mountain at 650 miles an hour, and we're the instructor pilot turns to General Denyakin and says, "And we do this at night." And he said the general's eyes got about this big. He couldn't believe that. But a funnier part was when after we returned to Nellis Air Force Base, when that flight was over, they had some static displays of the airplane on the flight line. This was like just after Desert Storm. Well, have a look at any one of these airplanes. So he immediately went for the F-117, the stealth fighter. That's what interested him the most. And he climbed up the ramp and he got into the seat. He was looking around cockpit, and he mumbled, "I'm sure glad we didn't get into a war with you guys."
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So you also flew diplomatic missions involving high-level Soviet officials such as Andrei Gromyko, Mikhail Gorbachev, and Boris Yeltsin. What stands out most from these interactions?
The fact that I flew with Gromyko really dates me. That was way back when. It was like a very, very first one. But yeah, I flew with that. I flew on Gorbachev's airplane, Boris Yeltsin's airplane. I wrote up a couple of memoirs on that, how Boris Yeltsin really embarrassed his own country when he flew into Ireland, but that's another story. They called that mission Constant Shotgun. It had lots of pilots. They had lots of Russian speakers. They had very few Russian-speaking pilots. And there were just a few of us called upon periodically to go out and they'd say, okay, go meet them somewhere out of the country, usually like in Shannon, Ireland, or in Gander, Newfoundland. Get on their airplane and fly into the country, fly out. They'd take us down to Cuba. He was in Cuba for a week on the beach there. It's terrible. Poor as hell.
So during this period, tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union were beginning to ease. Did you personally sense that historic shift happening?
The frequency of these flights coming in from Russia was really built up. And we got to fly on many different types of Russian airplanes. Usually it was just their standard airliner, the Ilyushin 6-2, but then all of a sudden they started flying the AN-124, their big C-5 type airplane, and Ilyushin 7.6s. It got to be a lot busier as years went by. So yeah, the Cold War definitely you could see the contrast. Whereas for years before, like in the early '80s, you were lucky if you had 1-2 flights a year coming out of Russia.
So you later served as site commander supporting arms control treaty inspections in Russia. Why was that work so important during that period in history?
Well, there were two treaties that were in play there at the time. There was the INF Treaty, the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, which limited the Russians from producing a certain type of certain class of missiles. And there was the START Treaty, which allowed us to track the missiles that they produced. They were still producing missiles, but when they brought a missile out of the plant, they brought it on a railroad car. If they were in any kind of a container that was more than 14 meters long, we got to inspect it. And we actually got to sometimes because they would bring missiles out, but they would be the SS-25, which they were allowed to produce under the treaty. But the SS-20 was a missile they were not allowed to produce. So we had a team of government people and contractors there to perform inspections on those missiles that came out to make sure they weren't producing the wrong kind of missile. And even to the point where we had an X-ray machine and that could actually X-ray through a railroad car. And pull that railroad car through there and take certain measurements on that to know, okay, yeah, that's an SS-25, you're good. And we had the opportunity to say, if we wanted to, say, well, we're not quite sure. Take this into the warehouse and we want you to open up that missile canister. They come in a big stainless steel launch canister. And said, we want you to open it up and we're going to take a closer look at that missile. We do that every once in a while, too.
Interesting.
Yeah. It was, it required living over there for long periods of time. We'd go in for 6-week rotations. And it was one of those jobs where I regretfully had to spend a lot of time away from home.
How about the food?
We had full-time chefs on the site.
Really?
And we were resupplied through various means, and we ate very, very well.
That's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I still keep up with one of the chefs that we had on site.
Amazing. So looking back, how significant do you believe diplomacy and military-to-military cooperation were in reducing Cold War tensions?
I think it had a beneficial effect because, in the military, if there's one thing that stands out strongly, whether it's our military or their military, it's that ethic of respect. And, when military got together with military, that was very, very evident. We all just kind of like held each other in fairly high esteem. And I think that, I don't know if that ever reached the upper levels. I would say probably not much of it did. Our national leaderships on both sides probably didn't really pay much attention to that, but I definitely felt it.
So now we have your life after the Air Force. So after retiring from the Air Force in 1999, you joined the Federal Aviation Administration and served there for another 15 years. What attracted you to that next chapter?
I knew that I could not stay in the Air Force forever. That was just a fact. And I found, and I said, I got to have something, make some kind of a transition into civilian life. And there came an opening up at FAA headquarters where they wanted someone to work overflight security, basically airplanes, Russian airplanes overflying the United States. Well, heck, I did that for years when I flew aboard their airplanes, and I kind of know what's going on, so I kind of stepped into the job. They just said, yeah, okay, good, you can do this. But I was still on active duty in the Air Force when I did this. So I was an active duty Air Force liaison to the FAA at headquarters downtown DC. And I was there a number of years, and working in that job very often, well, most of the time, I wasn't even required to wear a uniform, so I'd be in civilian clothes coming and going. And I like to tell people, when nobody was looking, I slipped over into a civilian job. Yeah, to the point where people would come up and ask me after I transitioned to a civilian job, basically doing pretty much the same job that I was doing while I was on active duty. People would come and say, Frank, have you retired from the Air Force yet? I said, oh, I did that months ago.
That's funny.
So it was kind of a natural transition.
So you worked both in international aviation and emergency management. How did your military background prepare you for those responsibilities?
I had already had lots of international flying experience. We did that a lot, particularly when I was flying out of Andrews, so kind of knew what was going on there. Plus, by that time, I'd acquired a master's degree in aeronautical science. As far as the getting into emergency management, after 9/11, emergency management expanded just exponentially. It took in, as far as the resources and the people that are taken in, I just felt like, look, I got to get in the fight. After seeing what happened, I was at FAA headquarters watching watching the towers collapse.
Right.
And then we could actually see the smoke coming from the Pentagon when we did that. So that had a strong impact on me,
sure.
And I wanted to get into that. I liked my international aviation time, working with the International Civil Aviation with Montreal. Had a lot of good experience up there, but that's where I needed to be in emergency management.
Absolutely. So was transitioning from military life to civilian federal service difficult, or did it feel like a natural continuation of service?
It more or less felt natural because I ended up in some very, very highly classified programs and still had my security clearance left from the military. So I got to get into some places that not too many people know even exist. So yeah, so it kind of fit what I'd been working with in the past years.
So many veterans struggle with identity after retirement. Did continuing public service help maintain that sense of purpose?
Well, I think the interim period when I was working in a civilian organization while I was still on active duty was for a good, smooth transition for me. So I was very fortunate in that regard. Although I had one coworker who periodically reminded me, said, "Hey, Frank, lose the uniform, will you?"
So, Frank, beyond your legacy of service, let's discuss community, faith, and personal reflection. So throughout your life, you remained active in church and community organizations. Why has community involvement always been important to you?
Well, let's take a look at the community we have, and I'm going to refer to my involvement in the Performing Arts Guild. You look and see, we've got a beautiful gym, all kinds of physical activities. At the same time, we have programs to help keep people's minds sharp. You got to exercise the brain too. And I always say the value of the Performing Arts Guild is giving people the opportunity. When you're performing in front of an audience, you got to have mental agility and focus. And that's what it's all about. But not only that, but at the same time, you're giving back to the community. Sure. You're giving something to the community.
Absolutely.
Doing that.
Since moving to Celebrate, you become especially involved in the performing arts community. What role do the arts play in keeping people engaged and connected? And what's behind your musical performance and your role in the group Speed Limit?
Speed Limit was actually the first rock band I'd ever belonged to. Up until Speed Limit, I was just kind of call myself a guitar goof, just playing acoustic guitar. Getting into that rock and roll playing like that, I had not done that before. Of course, we had our lead guitarist, Steve, who was very helpful to me, and telling me, look, this is how you play that. This is how we play it in rock and roll. And it's been very enjoyable and very eye-opening for me, and it's something I want to just keep on doing.
Yeah, it's great. No, we love it. We love it. You said that active engagement, especially mental engagement, is essential as we grow older. Can you expand on that philosophy?
The brain, think of the brain as a muscle, and some of us have muscles for brains, I don't know. And but yeah, you got to work it. You got to work at it, and it takes time, concentration, and dedication too. You got to keep at it, and it's especially important to if you can do that with other people, because you got other people that to kind of hold you accountable for to practice, hold you accountable to to develop new songs and be your best, being your best out there. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely. So one powerful statement from your reflections was, Service does not end when the uniform is taken off. What does that statement mean to you personally?
Well, let me put it another way. We're defined by what we give to the world, not with what we take from the world.
You also mentioned that military constantly pushed you to become better than you believed you could be. How did the mindset influence the rest of your life?
I've had a couple of major things in my life. So one was in 2007, our house in Leesburg completely burned to the ground. That was a major setback and a shock that we had to overcome.
Wow.
But worse than that, though, was in 2018 when our younger son passed away. I think it's what really held me and Cheryl together was all the things that we'd been through together in the military. She grew up in a military family. She knew what the score was. She knew what life was going to be like, and that these kind of tragedies are going to happen. And through that, we've learned to just work together so well and turn something really bad into something positive. So, I think the military experience was very helpful in getting us through those kind of times.
Absolutely. So, closing thoughts, when you look back to your military career and life of service, what accomplishments are you most proud of?
Well, you see, I separate experiences from accomplishments. Experiences are things like, seeing the parade on Red Square and other things like that. For an accomplishment, I don't think anything felt better than taking a 250,000-pound airplane from 30,000 feet, sending it into a major airport through air traffic, getting cleared for approach, past the initial approach fix, final approach fix, bring it right down and never see outside the airplane because you're still in the weather. Don't even see the runway until you're right there on top of the runway. Settle it down very nicely, set the nose wheel down, and slow it down using thrust reversers and make that first turn off to get it off the runway, clear the runway, and do so without putting a ripple in Mrs. Bush's coffee.
So what lessons from military service have stayed with you the longest?
The work ethic. Never settling for mediocre performance. That probably has stayed with me. And particularly when I was flying with the folks out of Andrews there, we call ourselves special air missions because you had to be perfect. And we always just say perfect was just barely good enough. And that has kind of stuck. Not that I don't call myself a perfectionist, but that ethic, that mindset, just that pursuit of excellence.
What advice would you give young Americans considering military service today?
Well, I'd first of all say that it's not for everybody. But if you go in with the right attitude, you can become a better person for it.
How would you like future generations to remember veterans of your era?
Well, for us, Vietnam was a chapter in the Cold War. And we won the Cold War. Don't forget that.
Finally, Lieutenant Colonel Peluso, what does service mean to you today?
Well, I pray that the Lord keeps me around to complete my novel, and I still have songs to play and sing.
You sure do, definitely. And we look forward to that. So today concludes my interview with retired Lieutenant Colonel Peluso. Lieutenant Colonel Peluso, thank you for sharing a remarkable story with us today. Your career reflects not only extraordinary military service, but also dedication to leadership, diplomacy, aviation, and our community. On behalf of the Celebrate Veterans Group and everyone watching, thank you for your service to our nation and for continuing to inspire others through our experiences. To our viewers, thank you for joining us for our first CVG Veteran Spotlight interview. Please remember to like, subscribe, share this video as we continue preserving the stories of American veterans. This is Tony Marco for the Celebrate Veterans Group. Thank you for watching, and God bless America.